Well, still about the agenda for the cabinet that's already in place. A whole lot from Nigerians expecting so much. Some are also asking the big question about fuel supply, fuel scarcity in so many parts of in some parts rather of the country. But joining us to look at some of the agenda this morning is Patrick Okigbo. He's a Public Affairs Analyst at Development and also a partner of Next Year. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Suleiman.
A whole lot has been said about the team, the motor-weighted team. Looking at the tweets today, some have been asking about petrol and scarcity and availability of petroleum products. But if you were to look at some key issues here with the new cabinet, what would you be looking at? Infrastructural development, petroleum, agriculture?
Well, first of all, because we're dealing with fuel scarcity today, you have to go to that issue. I think whether we like it or not, we must swallow that bitter pill of answering the question about fuel subsidy.
It goes back to subsidy.
No, it's subsidy. I mean, the reason why we continue to have the scarcity, it comes back to subsidy. Because as we continue to subsidize corruption, we cannot make the investments we need to make in being able to refine our own petroleum product. So we must go back to that issue. And we've been talking about this since 2010, and we can spend 2 shows on it. But the critical issue is all the facts are on the table for the government. All the options are there for them. They need to make a decision. And the decision is, do you continue to subsidize corruption? I've started calling it subsidized corruption so that people can understand what the critical issues are. You're not subsidizing it for the masses. The masses, first of all, do not use the petrol. The kerosene that they use, you claim you subsidize, that it should sell at 50 naira. I'm yet to meet a Nigerian who buys kerosene at 50 naira a liter. So we need to get over that issue. But on the larger issue, we need to deal with infrastructure. And that's why, to sound typically Nigerian, we have to be praying for, Fashola. Because his success determines to a great extent the future of the country. We must solve power, we must solve works, and by works I mean transportation, infrastructure, housing, all of those issues. And the numbers are incredible. Some documents the past administration put together on a 30-year integrated infrastructure master plan for Nigeria. We're looking to spend $2.9 trillion over the next 30 years to get us to be able to stand still. Over the next 5 years, we need to spend about $125 billion. On average, we spent about $9 to $10 billion every year. So we need to up that to an average of about $25 billion every year.
Sorry, when you say we spend about $9 to $12 billion $9 to $10 billion every year, is it actually on the infrastructure or is it being frittered away?
Okay, so
it might be more than that.
If you look at what government spends in building out infrastructure every year and what the private sector spends, it comes to about $9 to $10 billion. If the question is, do we get $9 to $10 billion worth of value of infrastructure? I'm sure your answer is as good as mine.
I don't know my answer. But let's go back a little bit when you talk about subsidizing corruption. Now, yes, everybody's talked about subsidy has to go for us to be able to invest in that sector. But what about the impact on the Nigerian? Is that considered as well? Because the government says for us to take out subsidy, we need to put some things in place, and that's what they're trying to do. But everyone says it has to go for us to be able to move forward. How do you balance out this?
Okay, so the new president in Malaysia took out a subsidy, and he showed his country what he's going to do with the money. He said we're going to use it to modernize our ports. And he showed how the investments in the ports will translate to a growth in the economy that will ultimately translate to the people.
So it still boils down to communication.
It's communication. It's what we suffer from in Nigeria is a deficit of trust. We do not trust that the government will do what it says it's going to do. If we trusted, and if they allowed us to engage in a rigorous debate as to what our future should be, then maybe the issues around taking away fuel subsidy would not be as bad. Some of the monies that were saved from the fuel subsidy thing that was done in 2012 was supposed to be spent through Shopee. Some of the money was spent, but Nigerians don't even believe that the money was spent. So if you were to hold a conversation today around removal of fuel subsidy. The problem is that there's a deficit of trust. And that is why I think that this current administration is in the best position to push forward that issue.
But how would this work out? Yes, a new cabinet is coming. You've talked about Fashola in power, works,
Housing.
and housing. There's Amechi in transportation. But there are other sectors of the economy. There's agriculture, Aldogbe, who some have said has experience in that aspect. There's Usani in Niger Delta, who studied environmental, who's an environmentalist, and he's put in that sector. But what's the guarantee that this men, because we look at environment, economy, there's finance, there's also the budget and planning. Can this team deliver trust? Because, I mean...
Okay, so like they say, the fish begins to rot from the head, right? If the head is right, then every other person will take cue.
Is that guaranteed?
I believe that what Nigerians are looking for is purposeful leadership. It is leadership they can trust. If the president continues with the integrity he's said to have, and he brings it to bear, and if any of the ministers steps out of line, and there's an immediate and direct consequence, then everybody will take cue. It's not like a few years ago, people said, oh, Nigerians will not obey traffic lights. But we do today, don't we? Because there's a consequence. Who wants to deal with LASTMA? Nobody. Yeah? So if there's a consequence for stepping out of line, then the ministers will step into line. And I believe that they have enough competence amongst them to decide to do the right thing and do it.